Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Phil Bliss, founder and CEO of Canada's podcast, coming to you today from Toronto. Keita Patol is an entrepreneurial success in fintech. He spent the last 14 years building Lending Loop Financial. Keita is the co-founder and CEO of Loop, where he's been building financial products for Canadian business for the better part of a decade. Coming from a family of entrepreneurs and small business owners, Keita has an acute awareness of the challenges SMBs face and has advocated for banking reforms, pioneered low-cost funding methods for SMBs, and helped provide more than $100 million to businesses across the country. So, Keita, welcome to Canada's podcast. Great to meet you and great to have you on. And as I always do, before we get into the conversation and all of the stuff that entails, let's find out about you a bit more, who you are, and your entrepreneurial journey to date. What you've been up to, just in a quick 2 or 3 minute overview.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for having me on. Excited to be here and have the conversation. So entrepreneurial journey starts at a very young age for me. I've been building companies or running little side hustles, going all the way back to an age that is 5 or 6 years old, when I was selling things out of school lockers or running little car washes in my mom's office parking lot. So I've really have been at it for quite a while, and part of that was probably inspired by my parents' journeys. But both my parents ran their own small businesses; they were entrepreneurs, and so I kind of grew up living in that environment. I used to work in my mom's business; she ran a catering company, so I'd do everything from delivering meals to being a waiter to working in the kitchen. I kind of went through it all.
Yeah.
Later on in life, I was into technology, into computers. I developed an interest in kind of software development. Tinkered around a lot in kind of high school and university, and that was kind of what ultimately drove me to wanting to build a company in the technology space. And I married that passion with an interest in financial services, and that was probably a little bit influenced again, back to my childhood. I saw how badly traditional financial institutions serve entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I firmly believe that they're the lifeblood of our economy. They're the reason that in many cases we have a thriving economy. We have private sector employment. It's mostly driven by entrepreneurs and small business owners. And seeing that our financial sector wasn't properly serving them, I thought that technology could be a fantastic way to innovate and create new products and services to help business owners be successful. So that was kind of the founding journey or story behind Loop.
So you kind of inherited your entrepreneurial drive. Does you look at your peers, your friends around you? Are you different than they are? Is entrepreneurship inherently different?
It's a good question. The honest answer I would say is, to some extent, yes. I think you have to be wired a little bit differently from a passion, a motivation, a risk-taking perspective. Um, there's certain decisions that you have to make in the journey of building a business or being an entrepreneur that um, you know you could say are not logical or rational. And I'm friends with a lot of smart people who aren't entrepreneurs or haven't started companies, and I don't think it's an intelligence thing. I think it's just the way that they're maybe wired and how they make decisions. So I do think there's a level of me that's different for sure.
Yeah. What's best about being an entrepreneur from your side of things?
Yeah, it comes with a lot of ups and downs. The ups are a lot of fun. The downs are not so fun. I think that when push comes to shove, uh, it's the feeling of real impact that you're able to create through the work that you do every day. and sometimes that impact is positive, sometimes that impact is negative, but you have direct control over the influence that you're creating on your team, your community, your customers, the country that you're in. There's an ability to affect real change and create positive impact. And I think that's what many people are passionate and motivated to do. And so for me, that's the overwhelming um, positive drive behind being an entrepreneur or founder is, when you see that impact of what you're working towards every day come to fruition because there's a customer who is struggling and your product unlocked things for them or it made their life easier. That's the fulfillment that you get, which you don't get out of many other endeavors in life.
Interesting. So, you know, you're in the fintech business. You're in Toronto. Um, you faced a great challenge, which we were talking about a pivot about 5 years ago. How did you manage that? I mean, that's a big deal. You had an established company at that point, and so you're running it but pivoting it. That's a big deal. How did you what did you learn from that you can pass on to people?
Yeah. I mean, I think the lesson of most businesses is the most important ingredient to success is resilience. There's going to be lots and lots of occasions and times when you're going to get knocked down and you have to pick yourself back up again. And going through a pivot is no different. We were at the time dealing with a pandemic, uncertainty for small businesses. We didn't know if our customers would be able to open their doors again to serve their customers, and we had to chart a new way forward for our business because there was too much uncertainty in the environment. We had to take a lot of the learnings that we had and turn the obstacles into opportunities. The phrase, the obstacle is the way is often something that I refer to. And so we were dealing with an environment and a situation at the time where there were a lot of obstacles in the way. Our current business we viewed as not viable because we're dealing with a market where there are pandemic restrictions in place. Small businesses weren't able to open. A lot of the customers that we'd served at that point in time were retail stores, restaurants, all the people that were directly impacted. And we charted a new path forward, thinking about not just starting at zero again, but could we take all the learnings and the lessons that we had and the great customer relationships that we built and chart a new course forward from there. So it was definitely challenging for many different reasons, and there were lots of obstacles that we had to navigate through. But I really do, go back to you're going to have those moments. Sometimes they're maybe not as challenging as literally rebuilding a business. Years after you've started. But you're always going to have challenges and obstacles in the way of building something. And I kind of view that as just one of the tests along the way to try and build a successful company.
Going through this, is it sort of a process that you've learned, like that has helped that you now sort of this is the way you deal with a challenge, like not just like that, but when you hit something, oh, 1, 2, 3 kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to just reset. I would say you have to reset mentally. So, firstly, oftentimes, you're presented with a challenge. It can be emotional, difficult. It's the thing you've been working on for a while. I think the first step in my mind is you've always got to take a step back and remove yourself from the situation because your immediate reaction is probably not going to be the right one. So you got to close your computer. You got to go for a walk. Whatever it is that you need to do, as an individual to reset. You first reset and say, okay, let's go back, digest, and think about the new paradigm I'm dealing with. And then, like everything else, it just becomes another problem that needs to be solved. You look at the problem as objectively as you can. Might be a huge problem, but you say, okay, what's step 1, 2, and 3 in solving this problem, and you move forward from there. And so I think if you apply that that methodology, and you're very resolute in trying to be as level-headed as you can when you're dealing with challenges, I think that is the best way forward. I think people often get into difficult situations when they let things spiral or they let things, manifest. But I think if you just kind of take a step back, reset, and start again, it's probably the best way to navigate out of difficult situations.
Stay ahead of the game with our expert tips and strategies that will help your business thrive in a digital era. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
I'm interested because, you sort of address the financing issues of a lot of entrepreneurs. So you've obviously met a lot of them with different circumstances, different this, different that. Is there, in terms of passing your knowledge on to those sort of in a similar, about to or progressing towards that, is there anything you can pass along in terms of what will make it easier, or not just easier, but what will make it more productive, as you approach that finance need, if you like?
Yeah. A couple of thoughts come to mind. Firstly, I know very little about how most of our customers' businesses work. I think the founders and entrepreneurs of those companies know a whole lot more than I do about the best way to run and operate their business. Because in many cases, the way that people get into a business is they're incredibly passionate about a problem or a product, and they go and build that thing, and that is what they're best at.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, when it comes to finances, for many, not for me, but for many other people, that's not the thing that they're passionate about. They didn't get into business to generate an income statement or a cash flow statement or to put a credit application together or funding applications. Those are all kind of byproducts of building a company. And so, when you think about the business dynamic and paradigm out there, you got a whole lot of people who are really good at their craft, who are good at doing what they do, but they're not good at the financial services part of it because they never got into business to think about finance. So I view that as our job almost as a company, and I think other finance providers should view that as their job as well, which is not to expect our customers or small business owners to know better or to know more, but how do we support them and enable them to access financial services without having to go through the difficult part of understanding how all of the ins and outs of it work. Like if you think about that maybe this is a silly example, but if you go and buy a product from a store, you're not expected to understand how that product was made, right? If you go and buy a car tire, you're not expected to know how all the machinery came together to make that tire. You just go and buy it. I think the same should be true of financial services, but we kind of have overcomplicated it for entrepreneurs. And I think that's our job to change that and make it easier for business owners to understand how their money works.
What are you most excited about in in your job and the world as it is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we see increasingly is that there's more and more opportunity to build global businesses. And for an entrepreneur, 100 years ago, you would start a company and you'd probably be selling to your neighborhood, right? You'd be selling to the few streets around where you lived. 20 years ago, that was probably, your city or maybe even your country. I think now we see more and more people who start building products and services, and from the day they start their company, what they offer can be offered to people internationally. So there's product and services companies today that start, and their market is the whole world. And I think that is a trend that will only continue to accelerate over the next 10, 20 years. And I think that there's a huge opportunity in our space, like in the financial services space, to actually better serve that need. Because, for the last 150 years, banking and financial services has been entirely local. It's been kind of built amongst local communities. It's built through branches and kind of this concept of doing business in one place. But the future of business is not going to look like that. And so I think that there's that change in how businesses operate creates a dislocation, but it also creates a really big opportunity for people to create better products and services for their customers. So I think that's what I'm most excited about when I think about finance is how do we make finance truly global?
So we talked about the pivot, but has there been any other major challenge, less on a technical side, that you've faced in the business to this point?
Um, yeah, lots of challenges. I'd say probably one of the biggest in our space is navigating regulatory complexity. Um,
Hmm.
Canada, where we live, has one of the most complex regulatory environments for financial services. Um, that's one of the things that's driven there to be an oligopoly in banking, right? We really have five banks that kind of monopolize or dominate the banking industry.
Hmm.
And part of that is entrenched through the kind of regulatory position that exists. And so building a business in the space is very challenging. And we had to navigate and continue to need to navigate many different obstacles that exist. You know, being able to just offer products like accounts, payments, foreign exchange, cards come with the need to register with different regulatory bodies, um, manage heavy loads of kind of compliance, and which I think is necessary, but it still comes at a cost of being able to set
Hmm.
up and run a company. So I think navigating the regulatory challenges of operating in this space, which is one of the more regulated spaces that exists, has been challenging, and I think it's something that we should look at as a country as an opportunity because I think it's been too long to compete and innovate in the space, and that's part of the reason that many of the services out there are very outdated. And so I'm hopeful that as we look to the future and we look to the next 5-10 years in Canada, that we will see an increase in competition, which you have seen in other markets like the US and UK. You've seen them move towards creating more competitive banking sectors, more competitive financial services sectors, and that's ultimately been a good thing for entrepreneurs. It's created better services. It's enabled more access to capital. It's increased productivity and growth. So that those are things that I'm hopeful that we'll see here in Canada.
Okay, that's interesting. If you could go back in time, say about 20 years, what advice would you give yourself?
Uh, yeah, honest answer, and this is I wouldn't say this is true for everyone, but for myself, I would have started a business earlier. I think the lessons that you learn starting a company and being an entrepreneur um, are not replicable through any other experience. So I mentioned I did a lot of like small business things, side hustles, car washes, selling bits and bobs. But I didn't start a kind of professional company until I was about 22, which I know is still quite young.
Still
But I
pretty
would have,
young, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I would have done that even younger. I would have said, as a teenager, and I think as I would have learned more and accelerated my learning curve
Yeah.
if I got started earlier than that.
You know, look at the mentoring side of things. What's the best piece of advice that you've had from a mentor that, you know, that you keep on using and you think you could let others know about it so they might use it as well?
Yeah, something that I try to get better at because I'd say I still have a long way to go is remaining focused. I think as an entrepreneur, as somebody who likes to build, um, there's a lot of shiny objects out there. There's so much opportunity. You see so much kind of white space to create better products and solutions. And I think that's kind of the gift and the curse of most entrepreneurs is you see all the opportunity that exists out there. But to be successful, you actually have to just be really relentlessly focused on doing one thing well at a time. And so that's the thing that I think is a lesson that that mentors of mine have shared with me. I continue to try to remind myself of all the time because I think it's so critical to building a successful company. Look at the most successful companies in the world. They've often done just one thing really well over and over again. Um, and I think that's a story as old as time, but yet nonetheless, it's something that so many people fail at doing well.
Join our thriving community of like-minded individuals who share a passion for success and innovation. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Okay, that's enough lessons, I think. That's about what, 20 plus minutes of deep, thoughtful stuff. Let's have some fun. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
It's a good question. My wife would probably be shocked at this because I don't like flying, but I've always thought that if one of the things that I would do is potentially be an airline pilot or just be a pilot, which I guess it's conquering a fear that you have. So I think that's one thing on the list of things that I'd probably like to try my hand at.
And what book are you currently reading or listening to that you would recommend, and not just the one you're reading now?
Yeah.
What would you recommend to some people to pick up and read or listen to it?
Yeah, I just finished the book today. The book is called "What You Do Is Who You Are" by Ben Horowitz. It's a book about building culture in companies, which was a really enjoyable read. I read a lot of business books. I think they've been instrumental to learning about how to build good companies, good operations, good teams. I enjoyed so he also wrote a book called the Hard Thing About Hard Things, which is kind of also about building companies. So I think those are two books that are somewhat tied together that if you're getting into building a company or entrepreneurship, I would definitely recommend.
Are you a morning or a night person?
Funny question. I'm a night person.
You don't fit the mold. You don't. I would say 70% of entrepreneurs seem to be morning, but
I know. Yeah, I've always been a night person. I've been a night owl. I'm struggling with that at the moment because I have a 6-month-old at home. So, being a night person means your number of hours of sleep drastically reduced.
Maybe that's what it is. It's nothing to do with entrepreneurship. It's to do with kids.
There you go. But yeah, no, it's I used to be one of those people that would get most of my work done between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. So my brain just kind of kicks into gear late at night. But I'm adjusting now, and I would say that I'm starting to get more of my work done in the earlier hours of the day, which has been good for managing my sleep.
If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be, and why would you choose it?
Curious, because anytime there's a subject that I hear about that I'm interested in, I can spend hours, days researching it, going deep into it, understanding the inner workings of how the concept works. I'm one of those people that's just relentlessly curious. So I'll keep asking why or dig down into understanding the root cause of root of why something exists in the way it does. And I think that's been something that's been very beneficial for me in building a company because I'm there's different founders out there. There's different types of entrepreneurs. I'm somebody who kind of really likes to get into every technical detail. I think that in financial services, it's a useful thing to be able to do because you need to be quite technically oriented to understand how to build a company in this space.
And so if you can get around the Trump thing that's keeping everybody up, what's keeping you up at night apart from Donald?
Apart from potentially impending tariffs on all of our small businesses. Yeah, it's a good question, and it's hard to think about other things because of the magnitude of that one. But I mean, if I was to pick something else that wasn't directly related to tariffs and small businesses, I would probably talk about the regulatory piece that we were speaking about a little bit earlier. I think that building a vibrant industry ecosystem requires having the right foundation in place, and it's something that we haven't gotten right in Canada. And I think that for companies to be successful in this space, we need to get that balance right. We need to promote more innovation. We need to modernize our banking system, modernize our payment system, give our businesses and consumers access to their data and information through mechanisms like open banking. So I think that getting the regulatory piece right over the next 10 years is going to be critical, not just to our sector but to our economy. I truly believe that for us to have an environment where companies can be successful, where they can raise capital, having a competitive ecosystem is important, and I want Canada to be successful, and that's why that matters to me. And that's why I've chosen to continue to build in Canada rather than jumping out into other markets.
It's been really useful session. I think this is some good points that people can pick up on. If someone wants to get a hold of you after listening to this, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to check out our business and our products, we're at bankonloop.com. So that's our domain. I personally am pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way to check me out. So my name's Kato Pastel. I'm sure it'll be relatively easy to find. There's not many people on LinkedIn with my first name. So, connect with me on there.
Okay. Thanks for coming on. It'd be great meeting you.
Likewise. Great to meet you as well. And thanks again for the time today.
Well, that meeting with Cato was really useful. I loved the focus that he had on building more efficient financing for entrepreneurs. Got to explore that a bit more. Anyway, I'm Phil Bliss. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter on our website and subscribe on our YouTube channel, as well as any of the major podcast channels. Thanks for listening to Canada's podcast, where you meet entrepreneurs that drive Canada's economy. See you soon.